Back to the daily grind. The channel's getting false flagged by triggered trolls, so make sure you subscribe to the new channel. Let's get to the MMA news. With Junior Dos Santos being flagged by USADA and pulled out of his UFC 215 bout versus top 5 contender Francis Ngannou, it leaves Francis Ngannou the Predator without an opponent for UFC 215. That is a huge blow to the card, which is headlined by Demetrius Johnson versus Ray Borg and co-headlined by Amanda Nunes versus Valentina Shevchenko. But at the same time, it may be good for Francis Ngannou in terms of his title hopes, because this was the Francis Ngannou's undefeated in the UFC, and they were all finishes. But people have been wanting to see him fight a top 5 contender before he gets his title shot. That was scheduled versus Junior Dos Santos, who was pulled out of the fight. Now, with that fight falling out and Stipe Miocic not having a clear-cut #1 contender, because he just beat Alistair Overeem and also Junior Dos Santos, and Alistair Overeem is the only #1 contender outside of Francis Ngannou. And Alistair Overeem, since he's just so recently lost to Stipe Miocic, a lot of people don't want to see that fight already again. So with that being said, there's only really one guy left for the job, and that's the Predator Francis Ngannou. Other than that, it's just going to be a rematch. This would be new blood. If Francis Ngannou was somehow able to win versus Stipe Miocic, it would really be insane. It would turn the heavyweight division back on its head, because right now I feel like we have a solid heavyweight champion that's going to be able to probably break the UFC heavyweight title defense record. It's only like 3 fights or 2 fights currently, and he's already at 2. So one more fight, I believe he breaks the record. But if Francis Ngannou is able to come out and win, because these are heavyweights, you must remember. So with that being said, it's always anybody's fight, it could be anybody's good day in there in the heavyweight division. Stipe Miocic definitely has the better skill. He has more proven skill, more experience. But Francis Ngannou's got power. All the heavyweights have the ability to touch you and put you down. Now, he will have to get through Stipe's technicality as far as Stipe's good hands and his wrestling. You know, Stipe's got really good boxing, especially for somebody as new to MMA as Francis Ngannou. Did I say wrestling? I meant boxing. Yeah, Stipe Miocic has really good boxing. That seems like it would be really hard for an MMA newcomer, somewhat to say, to get through. But Francis Ngannou, man, he's did nothing but pass all of his tests with flying colors. Now, he hasn't been tested by a top 5 contender, as I've said, but at the same time, it's the heavyweight division, so anything can happen if he gets this title shot he's asking for. He came out to social media and he called out Stipe. Listen to what he had to say. Stipe does not have an opponent for December 2nd at Detroit. I'm here at UFC, at Dana White, at Mick Maynard. Let me do this fight. Fire, fire, fire emoji. I know my African accent probably sucks, but I don't give a fuck. It was fun. So, now this would be a great fight. I didn't know Stipe Miocic was targeted for this Detroit UFC 218. That is the card that John Jones versus Alexander Gustafsson was supposed to be taking place at before John Jones was popped by USADA. But it does make perfect sense for Stipe Miocic to headline Detroit. Why? Because Detroit is known for, their factories, their car factories and shit, the working man, the working class, and Stipe Miocic is the working man. He's the heavyweight champion. He never quit his day job as a firefighter. He still goes to work 3 days after he fights, three days before he goes to training camp, a day before camp, he's at work. After the weekend after his fights, he'll defend his heavyweight title and still go back to work as a fireman. So Stipe is that working man, as far as UFC heavyweight champions. So the people of Detroit should be able to relate to that, I'm thinking. I think Stipe would be a great headliner for UFC Detroit. I mean, is he going to be able to draw in as pay-per-view buys as John Jones? Fuck no. Will I love the fight, Stipe versus Francis? Fuck yeah. I mean, pretty much anyone's going to love heavyweight fights. Most heavyweight fights are entertaining just because at any moment somebody could get dropped. Yes, you have a few boring heavyweight fights here and there, but usually you're always going to get your money's worth out of a heavyweight fight. So with that being said, man, if you can think of a better contender to fight Stipe for the title other than Alistair Overeem, who's it going to be, if it's not Francis Ngannou. I can't think of anybody, so I hope this fight gets booked. Francis Ngannou would lose his opponent in Junior Dos Santos, but gain a title shot. That would be things falling in his favor, man. That would be a pretty fortunate injury, or USADA violation for Francis, as far as Junior getting pulled from his fight, because there's no clear contenders in the heavyweight division right now. It's crazy. It's really crazy. Look at the top 5 of the rankings. Kane is out. Fabricio's just lost. Junior just got pulled. It's Francis. To me, it's a no-brainer the more I think about it. I hope this happens, man. If Francis, I would easily pick Stipe to win the fight. I think he'd be a heavy favorite. But if Francis was able to win, I would probably just shit myself. I would probably shit on myself just from watching this guy and knowing how he hasn't fought a top 5 contender, seeing his progress in the UFC, knowing he's usually the underdog when he goes into these fights, and he finds a way to win, not only win, to get the finish. I know he's huge, he's got the size, he looks scary to some people and all that shit, but still, he's fought some heavyweights, man. He's fought some UFC heavyweights, and whether or not that you believe the heavyweight division isn't stacked, I know it's not stacked, but it's still the UFC. It's still better than heavyweights anywhere else in the world. There's nobody else better than the UFC as far as overall talent. So if you're beating the top 15 in UFC, you would beat the top 15 anywhere. Now the top 5 is a different story. If you're fighting a top 5 guy in their prime, yes, Stipe is going to lose a fight. He's not going to go undefeated forever. I'm not talking about Stipe Francis. Francis is eventually going to lose. It's probably going to beat the Stipe. Be careful what you wish for, big man. It is what it is. Let the haters know what the fuck you tap, man, in the comments, dude. If a firefighter's business can go up in smoke and a plumber's business can go down the drain, can a hooker get laid off from work?